off right here, it doesn't matter when the convulsions took place. Okay, it says Amar Rava Amar, but the Shita switches it to Amar Rava. The difference is if he's arguing on someone or if he's making a brand new statement. That's usually how it works. Amar Rava would be a new statement. So Amar Rava, Pirchas Amru, B'Seif Shchita. Although he is arguing here, but nevertheless, it's re-quoting Rava's statement before, where Rava said that it needs to be at the end. So, Amar Rava Mina Minala. How do I know that it needs to be at the end? The Tanya was taught in the Braisa. You're familiar with this pasuk. We read it on the holidays. Shara kesef vayez ki yivolid. Very good. An ox or a sheep or a goat, when it is born, 7 days it's under its mother, and on the 8th day it could be brought as a sacrifice. Mm-hmm. So the Gemara learns out different things from each of these words. It says, Oik Shorei Kesef. That's excluding Kalayim. It needs to be either an ox or a sheep, but you're not allowed to bring for a sacrifice an animal that's a mixture of two animals. Oy eitz, or a goat. What is that excluding? Prat lenidma. That's referring to an animal that was born that looks like a different animal. So they say Mary had a little lamb and the doctor fainted. So it gave birth to an animal, but instead of a goat, it comes out a sheep or some other animal. Now, that's considered a very big mum, and you can't bring that as a sacrifice. Ki yivaled, that will give birth, prat li'etzidofen, excluding a cesarean. An animal that's born with a cesarean is not valid for a sacrifice. Shivas yamim, 7 days. Prat l'mechusar zman. Okay, that's an easy one. It needs to be seven days old. Tachasimai, under its mother, prat liyasim. Its mother needs to be alive. Can't be an orphan. The Gemara says an orphan. Hayasam hechidami. What does it mean? It can't be an orphan. Eily mediyaldasi imei v'hader meisa. If you say that the mother gave birth to it and then it died, lo'ilam techi b'teisel. Does the mother have to live forever?
3 days.
Even for that, we're surprised that it should take so long. Now, Rashi quotes the Teres Kohanim that says that because it says Tachas Imai.
Is there shit going on here?
Tachas Imai would tell me that it needs to be 8 days. That it needs to be 7 days with its mother. But then I have another pasuk that says Im Imai. That tells me as long as they were in the world at the same time, which teaches me that the mother doesn't need to be alive all 8 days. As long as they were in the world together at a certain moment, that should be enough. So the Gemara now says, Ela de meiser v'hada yalidite. It must be that the mother died, and then it gave birth right afterwards. That's considered an orphan. The Gemara asks, that we should know that it can't be a cesarean. Now, there's two ways of reading this, but the simple explanation would be that if the mother died, it won't be able to give birth without opening it up. Mm-hmm. It's also the other possibility is that even if it does give birth without opening it up, that may still be considered a cesarean. If after it's dead, it comes out. However it comes out, that's considered a cesarean after it's dead. And we have a pasuk that says it can't be a cesarean. It has to be the actual labor process. Elipshita, rather it's obvious that the pshat over here is that it can't be an orphan. It can't be zeh perish l'misa v'zeh perish l'chaim. It can't be that as this one dies, this one's born. It can't be that the mother's dying as the child is being born.
Like Rachel?
Mm-hmm. Right. They said there was this Rebbe, they came to him, they asked him, pray for this woman, she's in childbirth. Pray for the child. It's having difficulty. And then another, at the same time, another person came and said, "Pray for this old man. He's dying." And the Rebbe looks into the heavens. And he says, "I can't pray for both. The soul of the old man has to go for this. I can't pray for both. He knows too much." Okay, so the mother is going to death, and the child is being born. So this is an interesting point. If we say that it needs to be alive at the end of the birth, then we can understand why I need one pasuk for a cesarean is invalid and one pasuk that an orphan is invalid. But if I say that it doesn't need to be alive b'seif leida, that it doesn't need to be alive at the end of the birth, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So lamalei, what do I need this for? What do I need that it has to be alive at the same time as the mother? It can't be an orphan. That I would already be able to know from that it can't be a cesarean. Why? Because let's say I would say that it's enough if it's alive at the beginning of the birth. Okay, we're going back to the convulsions, but we have that in mind. But we're referring to this animal that's being born. That if the mother was alive at the beginning of the birth, and at the end of the birth, and it died before the end of the birth, so that would be considered a cesarean. At least the end of the birth was a cesarean. It would be invalid. So, because it died in the middle of the birth. So it must be that the fact that I need a special pasuk to tell me that it wasn't an orphan, that it was alive at the same time as its mother, it must be that there was a full birth, and then it was born. The mother was alive the whole time. Otherwise, it won't need a pasuk that it can't be an orphan. Now, the opposite is obviously not a problem, because once it says that it can't be an orphan, that doesn't tell me that the mother needs to be alive. That doesn't tell me that anything about the cesarean, because the cesarean could be even with the mother's alive. That doesn't tell me anything. But nevertheless, what we're saying here is Rava's statement is that it needs to be alive at the end of the birth is being proved by the fact that I have two sources. One that it can't be a orphan, and the other one that it can't be a cesarean. Now, if it would not be considered an orphan if the mother died in the middle of the birth, then I wouldn't need that extra pasuk of it that it shouldn't be an orphan, because automatically it would go under the category of a cesarean, and that would have been satisfactory.
We're trying to prove that
the convulsions
is a very lengthy,
right? It's a lengthy proof,
convoluted or complicated way to try to prove this.
What we're trying to say is that anytime we have any process that something needs to be at, is it the beginning, the middle, or the end? And we're proving that the birthing process, it needs to be at the end, which also means that the shechita process, it needs to be alive throughout the whole time. That's the comparison. If the birthing process needs to be alive the whole time, the shechita process also needs to be alive until the end, which means that the convulsions, which are a sign that it was alive, need to be at the end. Yeah.
Another thing is, obviously we're not dealing with animals that have a form of epilepsy. They've never had convulsions before. The most common convulsion you'll see is like in a doctor's office where the person, they see the needle, they're about to get the shot, they fainted, but nobody, or you see it elsewhere, Chullin, and instead of lying the person down for the blood to go to the head, all right, they're sitting them up and saying, get some more of this and that, and then they start convulsing. The bottom line is, the physiology of that convulsion is blood is not going to the brain.
Uh-huh.
So if you now say, at what point is blood not going to the brain? Well, it's at the end of the shlita when you finally got, because the blood draining, that's when the convulsion will happen. A convulsion that's going to happen before then wouldn't happen unless the animal had some sort of brain disease and epilepsy, because the blood is still in the brain.
That's interesting. I understood this a little differently. I understood that we were talking about how long does it need to be alive throughout the shechita, and it was, so if it needed to be at the end, I mean, then it needed to show us that it was alive throughout the whole shechita. But the way you're explaining it is that it has to do with, was it something else that's causing the convulsion, or is it the shechita that's causing the convulsion? But okay, that could be. Very interesting.
I'm not on this list, so it doesn't count much.
There was a Rabbi Soloveitchik has a famous drasha.
That explains why you graduate.
Oh yeah, he described how everyone was talking, all the rabbis, and this one enters, and this one enters, and all the way down from all through all the generations, and then he described how like now there they are talking in the yeshiva of the same. Okay, Amar Rava. Rava says Hilchasa. The halacha is Kiham Masnisa, like the following Mishnah. Behema Daka, a small animal, Shapash the Yad of Alayach. If it stretched out his hand but it didn't return its psula. Bamedvar Mamurim, when do we say this? Biyad. That's only with the hand. I said Mishnah, but it's actually a Tosefta, because it's only Masnisa. It's only one nun, right? It's a Brisa. When do we say this? If it stretched out the hand, Aval Beregel, but if it's the foot, the hand is the foreleg. But if it's the foot, Bein Pashta v'lei Kafafa, Bein Kafafa v'lei Pashta, whether it stretched it out and didn't bend it, or it bent it and didn't stretch it out, so over there it's Ksheira, that's going to be valid. So in other words, that restriction of opening or closing, that's only on the foreleg, not on the foot. But Medavar Mamurim Bedaka. When do we say that there's this distinction? That's only by a small animal, Apple Begasa, but if it's a large animal, Bein Biyad, Bein Beregel, whether it's the front, the foreleg, or whether it's the foot, Bein Pashta v'lei Kafafa, Bein Kafafa v'lei Pashta, it's Ksheira. Interesting. You don't have that distinction. Even on the foreleg, if it just opens it up, it just stretches out, that would also be considered a sign of life. V'oif, and by a bird, this is what you mentioned, Afilu lai refref elagapa, even if it only flutters its wing, v'lei kishkish, but it doesn't. How do they translate kishkish? It doesn't wag. Elas navai, only its tail. Hareza pirkus, that would be enough. My kamash malan. What is Rava telling me by saying this is the halacha? Kula tanini. All of it was taught in the Mishnah. Behemadaka shapash the yad of zira, small animal that stretched out his hand and didn't return it. Psula. Sheina leitzas nefesh. Yad in regalai. It says yada. So if you read the Mishnah carefully, you'll see that everything that Rava said could be understood from the Mishnah. Daka in gasalai. Even a small animal only. Because it said behema daka, that stretched out his hand and it didn't return it. So everything was there. The Gemara answers Eifetz Strichale Deleitanan. We didn't mention the bird. So Rava Schidish is the bird that flutters its wing or wags its tail. That's going to be considered a pirchas, convulsion, and the bird is considered alive. We're discussing here the whole time the sick animal to know that it made sure it was alive the whole shechita. Okay, the Mishnah. Here, let's leave the Mishnah for tomorrow.
Can it affect a person if he a sick animal?
That's interesting. That's interesting.